What in the world is happening with the Kansas City real estate market? What does this commission and lawsuit settlement stuff mean for me if I'm buying or selling a home here? Why haven't mortgage rates dropped already? And how does the election impact what could happen with home prices later on this year? This video, we're going to break down all of those topics. And at the end of the video, I'm going to share with you what some of my clients are seeing who are buying and building and even selling homes around the Kansas City area. Part number one is all about the National Association of Realtors settlement and how it impacts buying or selling a home right here in Kansas City. I've seen all the podcasts, I've seen all of the radio clips, I've read all of the headlines, all of the articles, and from what I gather, based on reading the proposed changes and what everybody's saying about them, it's like 95% of the stuff out there is just kind of missing the mark or doesn't quite understand how real estate commissions are handled. And it's my goal in this video not to sell you on the idea of using a real estate agent. You've probably already made up your mind one way or another what you would prefer to do. Instead, I want to show you what this could look like in practice. But first, I want to point out that all of this stuff, these are proposed changes. This has to be accepted. There are a lot of hoops that will have to be jumped through. The Department of Justice has long wanted to intervene into the real estate market and regulate how homes are bought or sold. So this proposed settlement is just that. Now, I do want to show you what these changes could look like. So we're going to go through this real quick, and then I'll break down what this actually means for the real estate market here. So it goes into effect mid-July if approved. And a couple of the implications. One is that there will be many ways in which buyer brokers could be compensated, including through offers of compensation communicated off of the MLS. However, using the MLS to communicate offers of compensation would no longer be an option. So what does this mean? This is one of my current listings. It's already under contract, but if you want to write a backup offer, we'd gladly entertain it. These are the fields in the MLS where any real estate agent who belongs to the Kansas City Regional Association of Realtors has access to. So if I'm looking up properties to go preview for a client, I can see the buyer's agent commission that the seller has already agreed to pay. What this change says is that these fields would just go away. They just disappear. It doesn't say that a seller can no longer pay that. It doesn't change how a seller can pay that, just changes how it can be communicated. Meaning, if I am a listing agent and we are offering the buyer's agent a compensation, an offer of compensation, I can text them, give them a phone call, email it. I can include it on my website, my broker's website. There will be a million ways to broadcast this information, even if it can't be included on the multiple listing service. The second thing is that it says the types of compensation available will continue to take multiple forms: fixed fee, concession from the seller, a portion of the listing broker's compensation, meaning the listing agent decides to pay the buyer's agent themselves. And then it goes on to say that sellers may communicate seller concessions via the MLS, provided that those concessions are not tied to using a real estate agent. So what does that mean? Well, the commissions field, now a little bit of wordplay, now the commissions gets kind of rebranded as concession. And now that can be disclosed right here, I assume. Maybe there's a separate field. Maybe it gets disclosed in private remarks. But again, this doesn't really change much about real estate agent commissions. And there is one thing that nobody's talking about that will. Essentially, it's the rule about written agreements, right? It says that MLS participants or real estate agents working with buyers must enter into written representation agreements with those buyers. And it says that they're required to do that before touring a home. The reason this is significant, the reason this is such a great thing for you if you're buying a home in Kansas City is that, one, there's a lot more transparency. You're going to know exactly what your agent is making before you decide to write an offer on that home. No longer is it secret. No longer is the seller deciding how much your real estate agent will be paid. You're in the driver's seat. I think that's a net good. The second thing is that what this will lead to is the scope of the negotiation. When you decide to write an offer on a home that you really love, now it becomes that much more important to know how to structure the deal. Because now the negotiation doesn't just involve the price, the close date, whether you inspect, any other terms and conditions. It also includes how the buyer's agent is getting compensated. If you've read the headlines, if you've heard other real estate agents say that this is really bad for you if you're a home buyer because now you've got more costs, it's flat out wrong. If you negotiate, structure the deal correctly, you know how to write these offers correctly, and your agent does, this is going to be a net good for you. It's not like you're going to pay the market value of a home and additional fees on top of that as long as you know how to negotiate. Now, the final thing that I want to say before we move on to the mortgage rates part of the video is that I have heard advice from other real estate agents. I've seen articles written that includes this advice that says, hey, if you're buying a home, you need to do it sooner rather than later so you don't have to pay more money out of pocket. I think that is a massive misunderstanding about what this change actually looks like, how it impacts you if you're buying a home in Kansas City, anywhere else for that matter. Buy a home on your terms. Don't buy a home just because there's this thing that a lot of real estate agents are freaking out about and they might not get paid, right? You got to do what's best for you here. And the best thing that you could do is find somebody who's really good at negotiating, structuring a deal, understands the market, so that way you can write a winning offer without having to pay extra money on top of that for someone who's not going to negotiate that well for you. Part number 2 is all about mortgage rates, and they were quite frankly supposed to come down a long time ago. In fact, there are videos on this channel that you can watch from a year ago. All the best experts, expert on expert and expert, basically putting their entire career staking it on the idea that mortgage rates were going to be around 6% or 5.5% by this time, which is obviously not what's happening. In fact, mortgage rates are at 7% as of right now. Today, I'll put the date on the screen so you can see it. They've been hovering around the upper 6s, the lower 7s for a better part of the last 3 months. And a lot of people, a lot of my clients, a lot of you watching this video, I'm sure are wondering, well, when are these finally going to come down? And there are 2 problems. One is that every single time that the Federal Reserve has met recently over the last several months, they've decided to keep kicking the can down the road and down the road and down the road. And part of that is because inflation, it's very stubborn. It's not coming down as much as it should be. And while we saw progress, downward pressure on inflation over the, a better part of 2023, inflation has started ticking up again. And perhaps it has to do with an onslaught of domestic crises and international crises that we're now involved in. But without getting too political, inflation, it seems like is very stubborn. Until that starts going down, it's likely that mortgage rates are going to stay exactly where they're at. The second reason has to do with the election, and we're going to discuss it during the next part of the video. But essentially, what we're seeing right now is that a lot of people feel trapped in their 2 to 3% mortgage rates inside of a home that no longer fits their needs. And something even worse to them than a 7% mortgage rate is the idea of having to continue to stay in their home. Essentially, what we're seeing is pent up demand. A lot of people have wanted to move for a very long time now. They're tired of waiting. They've heard the promises of the Federal Reserve reducing mortgage rates, and that can just keeps getting kicked farther and farther down the road. So a lot of people are saying, you know what? My hands are up. I'm going to go ahead and bite the bullet here, and we're just going to go ahead and move even though I'm increasing my mortgage rate. In fact, most of my clients are moving in from outside of the Kansas City area or back to the Kansas City area. And most of the time it's for work. It's to be closer to family. It's not necessarily because their home doesn't work for them, but I anticipate a lot more people deciding to put their home up for sale and purchase a new home just because they're tired of waiting. And that pent up demand just keeps growing and growing day by day. Part number 3 is all about the election. I mean, we're not getting political. We're not going to get that political. In fact, this is just a question that I've had from a lot of clients who have reached out, like, how does this impact me? Should I wait until after? Should I do it sooner? Like, how does this impact mortgage rates? And according to this article from Yahoo, the most credible source in the world, it basically says that there's quote unquote not really an impact on the election, that in some years during an election, mortgage rates will go up after the election and some they go down. It seems to find or suggest that there's not really a correlation. But here's the problem right now is that a lot of people are tired of what the economy looks like today. They're tired of paying so much more for everyday goods than they did just like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, before the pandemic, etc. The problem is that mortgage rates since then have more than doubled. And if the Federal Reserve was to step in and start decreasing mortgage rates during an election, even if inflation starts going down dramatically, and even if they feel like they could reduce mortgage rates sooner than it looks like they can right now, they're likely to hold off until after the election to sidestep any of that perception. And this is true regardless of who wins the election, most likely, is if they had the bandwidth to reduce mortgage rates, they're likely going to wait until afterwards. So what this is like leading towards is if you're going to buy a home and you decide to wait until after the election and after mortgage rates theoretically at some point, hopefully, knock on wood, after those start going down, it's likely that that pent-up demand from everybody who's waiting and waiting and waiting, we know only a fraction of them are deciding to bite the bullet, especially if mortgage rates get to a magic number of somewhere in the 5%. It is going to be messy. A lot of these homes are going to be seeing like multiple offers over asking price, waiving inspections. While that's happening right now, what I'm seeing, and this depends on the part of town that you're in, the part of what city, suburb that you're looking for a home in around the Kansas City area, but it seems like anything in the 200s, 300s, even sometimes the lower 400s, especially the 2 and 300s, those are going. They're flying off the shelves. A lot of people are going through those homes. The day zero on the market, a lot of people are writing crazy offers on some of those homes, waiving the inspections. That's where most of the demand in the market is right now. What I'm seeing above 400, above 500, and really all the way up is a lot of people are taking more time. It's possible to negotiate a little bit more. This isn't true across the board. Some homes are sitting on the market, but on average, on balance, what I'm seeing with a lot of my clients, one who just went under contract on a home in Lease Summit this past weekend, we didn't have any other competing offers. We didn't have to go over the asking price. We got our inspection. We're not having to do anything funky with the appraisal. Honestly, it was a very balanced negotiation on both sides. Got another client who just went under contract on a home in Overland Park that's absolutely beautiful. We've negotiated a really good deal for them where they're going to get some newer utilities inside of the home. They also have a sale contingency on their home, which are unheard of, especially compared to the last several years when the market was absolutely crazy. So long story short is what I'm seeing is a lot of home buyers are essentially taking a little bit more time. It seems like there's not as much competition for homes priced like, let's say, the mid 400s and all the way up. And that while some are flying off the shelves, the majority of them aren't. What I'm noticing on the sell side is that a lot of people are listing their homes at really aggressive prices that they could have gotten just last year, or the year before, or 2 years before that without a problem. But now those homes are starting to sit on the market for 7 days, 14 days, 21. And it just keeps going up and up and up. But what I'm seeing is that even some of these properties that really will sit on the market for a little bit more time than we would have just seen just a couple years ago, is a lot of those properties are selling at the list price or just slightly below the list price, and some of them are selling above the list price. So this is a very odd market. I think a lot of people are on the fence trying to decide, should I sell my home now? Should I buy a home right now? And all that I can say is that if you are certain you're going to buy a home in the next year or 2 years, it's likely, as long as you're prepared for it, as long as you're comfortable with today's mortgage rates and refinancing later on, and you know that you're comfortable with those rates until you get to a point where you can refinance. You don't want to adopt a really high payment that's unaffordable, banking on the idea that rates are going to go down and your payment's going to cut in half. That likely isn't happening anytime soon. But if you're in a comfortable spot where you can afford a home, you can afford those higher mortgage rates, what you're getting in exchange for that is likely lower prices compared to what we're going to see as soon as those rates start coming down and we breach that magic number of, even if we hit like the mid 6%, I think it's going to be absolutely crazy. And if you have any questions about how to navigate this, should you do it now? Should you wait? There are advantages to waiting, but it all depends what you're looking to do. Would absolutely love to help you and have a conversation about that so we can support you in buying, building, even selling a home right here in Kansas City. So all of my contact information is right down below. Feel free to give me a phone call, text message, email. I would absolutely love to support you. That is all for this video. In the meantime, make sure to check out this playlist of all of our videos where we go through and tour new home communities around Kansas City, or you can click on this video right here, which is the one that YouTube thinks you would enjoy the most. So click either here or here, and I'll see you on the other side.